Hello and welcome back to the Guns on Pegs podcast. My name is George Brown and I'm the editor at Guns on Pegs. And as usual, I am joined by Chris Horn, managing director of Guns on Pegs. Chris, how's it going?
All good, George. All good. You know, shooting is like London buses, and the invites come along at the same time. Do you have that issue?
Well, we shoot kind of spread out over the season here at home. But what you're trying to say is you've got lots of shooting coming up. Is that right?
I've not had any. And then I got one lovely invite from one of my best mates. And then I got another one to be at another shoot the next day, 6 hours away. And of course I said yes. So I've got finishing this week with 2 lovely days, but one of those hellish journeys in between where you've got to leave almost awkwardly early.
I'm trying really hard to feel sorry for you, but it's not working at the moment.
Yeah, I know. It is just the way, though. But my other half understands, which is most important.
That is always a good thing to have, as an understanding other half. Right, Chris, things are a bit different today. Tell everybody why.
Absolutely. So today we've got 2 guests with us. We have Corry Cavell-Taylor and Marcus Janssen. I have to say that so I can intro them both properly. Corry is managing director of Bradshaw Taylor, who are an outdoor and country clothing specialist. But Corry created the first Schöffel field coat, the ptarmigan, back in the early 1990s, no less. That's obviously a massive staple in the British countryside now. And he also created the Oakham gilet, which I think is possibly the most British item of clothing there is. Marcus now joins an elite club of 2, maybe 3, depending on which way you look at it, people that have been on the podcast twice. He joined us for his first appearance with his good friend and ex-England rugby international Tom Croft back in Series 1. Marcus is head of country brands at Bradshaw Taylor, is essentially in charge of iconic brands Schöffel and Chameau. He's former editor of Field Sports magazine, as it was then, and both guys can regularly be seen out in the shooting field and on the river. A huge warm welcome to Corry Cavell-Taylor and Marcus Janssen.
Thank you very much, Chris. Nice to be breaking my duck here.
and good to be back. And good to see you both.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you both on. Now, first question before we get into things, settle a debate. Is it Schöffel or Schöffel?
It's Schöffel.
Schöffel. Neither of my 2 options.
I reckon everyone would have got that wrong.
But better to call it Schöffel.
Okay.
If you're going to get it wrong, go for Schöffel.
Yeah. So it's on the Bavarian border with Austria, and the Schöffel brand was founded just over 200 years ago in 1804 by Peter Schöffel's forebears. So he's the 7th generation of the family. I was lucky enough to meet the 6th generation, Hubert Schöffel, back in 1993 when I persuaded them to make me my ptarmigan field coat, the first GORE-TEX waterproof, windproof, breathable coat in the country market. Up until that point, it was all about wax barbers, and it's still about wax barbers for many people, but for some people, actually moving into a technical synthetic coat has been a good thing.
Right, should we crack on with it, Chris?
Yeah, I'm keen to hear what the guys have got with them, because I know that they were crafting something a minute ago. It's George's favourite section of the pod. What's that you're drinking?
Well, I'll start. So some people will know this about me already, but twice a year, I'm afraid to say I do a complete detox cleanse. And it normally happens directly after the shooting season. And then, funnily enough, straight after the game fair, when my body is at its most wrecked. And this year's cleanse started straight after the game fair. I mean, you guys are partly to blame. The Guns on Pegs party has got rowdier and rowdier every year. And I haven't had any booze. Well, that's not strictly true. I haven't had an alcoholic drink since the game fair until last week. Corry and I were together funnily enough, with Peter Schöffel. We were fly fishing with him last week. And Peter very kindly hosted us in his home And he took us down into his wine cellar and opened 2 very special bottles of wine. And I felt obviously obliged to have a glass of red wine. So apart from that, I haven't had an alcoholic drink since the game fair. And I've gone back onto my detox, my cleanse, until Christmas time. That's my aim. So I'm ashamed to say that what I'm drinking is non-alcoholic. It is called a rock shandy. It is the shandy was exported from Britain to the colonies, and obviously it was originally beer and unsweetened lemonade. And then the colonies exported their own versions back out. And there is a South African version called a rock shandy, and it has a tiny amount of alcohol in the sense that it's got Angostura bitters in it. So it's half lemonade, half soda water, and a splash of Angostura bitters served with a large slice of lemon. So it's very refreshing, and that, I'm afraid, is what I'm drinking today.
So the point of what's that you're drinking is really the story, and I think that we absolutely let you get away with that one because that fully came with a story. So you're allowed.
Yeah, very nice bit of history as well.
Exactly.
Chris, I think he only just escapes.
We'll come back to that.
We'll get him at the game fair next year, don't worry.
Oh, you will. Yeah.
And Corey, what have you got?
I'm drinking what's called a horse's neck. This particular drink was introduced to me at Rockingham Castle on a shoot. In fact, way back in 1993 when I was plotting the ptarmigan shooting coat. And it's ginger ale, 3 parts, Angostura bitters, 1 part brandy, and a lemon. And it's absolutely delicious. So,
wow, that does sound good.
That's my favourite piece. You want to try one, Chris? It's delicious.
I would if I could. This is why we should be doing more in person, really. But it's tricky getting one around. But yeah, no, very good. And George, how about you?
Well, my kids were ill over the weekend with a cold, and I took a number of coughs and sneezes directly to the face over the course of the weekend. And so inevitably, I'm feeling a bit crap today. So I have got a hot toddy to try and make myself feel better. It is mostly whiskey, but there's a bit of hot water and lemon juice in it, so I'm calling it a hot toddy. And it seems to be working so far. I've had a couple of mouthfuls and I feel better already. So, yeah, that's me.
Very good.
Chris, what have you got?
I've found a beer which I'm sure lots of people have had, but I haven't had. And after 48 episodes, that's important to have found one that I haven't. But anyway, it's from the Hogsback Brewery, which a lot of you will know, based in Surrey. It's the Tongham Tea, and TEA stands for Traditional English Ale. And Tongham is the village that the Hogsback Brewery is in. And it's lovely. So classic British beer. That's what I've gone for this week.
Very nice. Having
had all sorts of very strange things recently from outside of our shores. So yes, enjoyable.
Very good. Cheers.
And yeah, cheers.
Okay, so now that we've all got a drink, let's move on to our first bit of listener correspondence. And Marcus and Corey, this section is called Whose Bird Is It Anyway? And it's where we ask our listeners to send in their shooting quandaries and queries and dilemmas, and we do our level best to offer them something approaching helpful advice on what to do in their tricky situation. This one comes from somebody I've decided to call Donald. And Donald writes, Dear George and Chris, I was introduced to your podcast recently, and now I'm addicted to listening to it, and I'm pleased that I have quite a few episodes to listen to. A friend of mine introduced me to shooting many years ago, and I've been shooting with him ever since. He's a kind and generous man, but sometimes forgetful. As he is now of the older generation, I've taken to picking him up and driving him around the shoot, and then dropping him home. My dilemma is that he's never offered to pay for the fuel in the car, even though we might be driving for 5 hours. Whilst out shooting, he'll always say, can I borrow a box of cartridges? And when the keeper's tip is asked for, he's always left his wallet at home. As you can guess, he keeps forgetting to repay the cash and cartridges. How can I tactfully remedy this situation without upsetting him?
Wow, that's a tough one.
So if he's of the older generation, do you reckon he's that au fait with podcasts? And so he might not hear what we say, so we can sort of get away with it, whatever we say.
My suspicion is it's not that rare an occurrence anyway. I reckon there'll be quite a few older gentlemen out there thinking, hell, it's about me.
Yeah, and there'll be quite a few younger gentlemen thinking about time this was talked about.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I mean, I think fight fire with fire, no? Just leave your wallet at home for once.
Guys, what are you doing in this situation if you're this chap who's got this guy who's just bleeding him at every opportunity for every bit of cash in his wallet?
I think maybe George is right. Maybe fill up with, intentionally when you pick him up, have a low tank of fuel, go and fill up and go, damn it, I've forgotten my wallet. And hope that he really hasn't forgotten his wallet.
You can't actually forget your wallet, can you? You just need to sort of leave it there and then go, oh, look, I found another card in the glove box.
Yeah.
When he has genuinely not bought any cash.
It's a tough one.
Yeah. Corey?
Oh, I think Donald's onto a hiding to nothing here. He's obviously a very charitable man.
Yeah, I mean, it could be argued that he's just repaying the favour for the introduction into shooting in the first place, and it's the tax that you pay.
So he says he introduced him to shooting a few years ago, and we've been shooting together ever since. I just wonder whether, he picked up on this generosity and he's thought, brilliant, you can be my shooting buddy forever.
All the older gentlemen's actually a billionaire, and he's just wondering how long it's going to take Donald to pluck up the courage to actually ask him for a quid.
Yeah. Oh, dear.
Before he hands the keys to his estate to Donald.
Exactly. You've been so good all these years, as I shall repay you with. Yeah. It must be really awkward, though. I mean, if you're rocking up to sort of tip the keeper, does each time you go to him, oh, you wouldn't believe it, forgotten the cash again? I mean,
it's
after a certain number of times, surely that's just a bit odd.
He must be very forgetful.
It also slightly begs the question, like, how long has it been going on for?
Yeah, exactly.
There's a sort of statute of limitations on it, isn't there? You can't go, hey, you remember that tank of fuel I bought 5 years ago?
Yeah.
Short arms and long pockets, difficult.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. It's no longer Donald's friend's problem for forgetting his money each time. It's now Donald's problem, which is why he sent us this email. It's like when you've got a sort of £5,000 loan with the bank, that's your problem. If you've got a £50 million loan, that's the bank's problem. And so there's a sort of sliding scale.
It's a very British problem, isn't it? It's a problem of British politeness, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
So have we got any useful advice? Like, have we got any practical solutions to this other than drop Donald's mate in it?
I'm totally with what you and Marcus said. You've absolutely just leave him high and dry one day in a really awkward situation amongst his closest mates and see what happens.
Ruthless.
You're going to have to hang him out at some stage.
Yeah, or bring out an itemized list that you've made up going back 5 years.
or one day just forget to pick him up.
Yeah, take another mate. Deary
I
me.
like that one as well. That's a good one. Excellent. So lots of potential strategies there, I think.
Yeah, over to you, Donald.
Yeah. Right, Chris, what's this week's unpopular opinion?
Yeah, so this one comes from someone we shall call Sean, who writes, my unpopular opinion came to me when listening to the pod whilst doing the graveyard 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. shift in the lambing shed during the spring, with the pod playing in the background. It is as follows. Shoots should either give the option or only sell days on a per shot basis, not per bird. My reasoning behind this is, having run commercial shoots and shoot days, I know that you are not able to choose the team that you host. Many a time have I looked out at the end of the drive to watch a flush of pheasants go sailing over the guns with a barrage of shots to see all the birds fly safely onto the wood behind. Then to have the awkward situation at the end of the day with the person who bought the day grumbling because his team have shot, say, 120 on a 150 bird day for 700 shots on flat East Anglian shoot. I believe that selling days as a shot count will allow shoots to cater to the more inexperienced guns who are new to the sport that we all love and allow them to enjoy their day as we would hope, keeping them coming back and spread the word. It would also relax the keeper or the shoot captain who can show off his best birds, not having to do the 6th or 7th drive to show them enough birds and attempt to get the bag, and not have to worry at the end of the day that we'll have a team of irate guns who think it's the keeper's fault and not that they just can't shoot. How has this not come up before as an unpopular opinion? This surely is quite well talked about.
I was going to say that you must have had this come up.
I don't think
before.
we have.
No, I've been sort of keeping an eye out for it so that we could put it in the moment it came in. And this is the first time someone suggested it.
It's one of the conversations that comes up a lot. And obviously in recent years with kind of, commercial shooting, I've heard it talked about numerous times. Of course, it opens a can of worms, doesn't it?
It does.
There is the argument that you do that and suddenly teams become very, very selective and their shot count goes down. But there's some merit in saying, it shouldn't be about the number of birds, killed. I mean, we've heard that said many times, and I think there's a lot of truth in that.
Agree.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be tempted to say I don't think he even goes far enough. I would say just a flat rate for the experience. We'll shoot what we shoot. We'll all have a nice time regardless.
I'd agree with that, George. It's a difficult thing to quantify, but that really is how shooting should be, shouldn't it? It shouldn't be on either number of shots or number of birds. It should be on, have you had a good time?
So there's actually a lot of shoots already that do that. I say a lot, I mean, not as a proportion, but there are a lot of shoots that do that. I think the common denominator between the shoots that do that is that they're so sought after that they can kind of do what they like. And, Lord so-and-so just goes, of course you can come for a day at my place, here's the price, which no other shoot really can get away with doing. And you don't reply going, do you mind me asking what the bag size is? You just can't. It's just, that's the price. Don't even go there. Yeah. And so that is the problem, that a lot of shoots just don't have that luxury of doing that. But that kind of is the way it should be, isn't it?
So, Chris, here's one for you. So 3 years ago, I went on a shoot in Norfolk, and we'd paid for a 150 bird day. And at the end of the day, it had been a very particularly thin day, and we'd shot 350 shots. And on the last drive, quite a few pigeons got cleaned up because there weren't enough pheasants. And the shoot said that at 2.5 to 1, we'd had our money's worth. And that felt very harsh to all of us. One of my colleagues friends had actually prepaid the day, of course, and so there was nothing to say on the day. But we certainly won't be booking there again. And it was a really lean day. But at the same time, to do it per shot, I think it's got to be done on, did you see enough birds for a 150 bird day? And if you saw enough, then you pay up and you smile and you say thank you very much, and you've had a great day. But I do think at the same time, if it's really thin, there has to be a conversation, doesn't there? Because both sides of the bargain have to be made appropriately.
Absolutely, yeah. And the situation that you're in is the sort of worst side of what we were just describing, which is the other shoots like that could use it to their advantage to just be poor and try and take you to the cleaners almost. And so what we're seeing most often is shoots just simply putting in, right, here is the ratio. So if you've had this number of shots, now you've still got the issue that Marcus points out, which is you can be super selective. And I've been on days where you're always sort of following the etiquette of whoever it is. Like, let's say someone's taken the day and you're a guest, and you follow the etiquette of that person. And you see sometimes the shoot captain, because no one's shooting on the first drive, first few birds coming out, and the shoot captain or the keeper or whoever is tearing his hair out. And everyone's being super selective. And that's the flip side of it, where it's like, well, hold on a second, you're not going to have the shots. So what can you do?
The other problem is, do you believe the clicker? Like, it's much easier to fake the number of shots than it is the number of birds in the bag at the end of the day.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think ultimately, like on a more serious note, I do think that shooting needs to get to a point where it's about the overall experience, and that's what you're paying for. When you go to a really nice restaurant, you're not paying because the ingredients cost so much, or you're paying because of the overall experience, the ambience, the service, the way that it makes you feel. And really, it would be great to think that shooting could get to that point where you're paying for the overall experience as opposed to the amount of times you've pulled the trigger or the number of pheasants in the bag at the end of the day.
And I think what's a shame with shooting is that in the restaurant world, people vote with their feet and that restaurant maybe goes under. The problem with shooting is that, Corry, you're going to vote with your feet, not go back to that shoot. But that's quite an expensive experience to have gone through to then reach that scenario. That's what makes it so tricky with shooting. Yeah. It's not just going out for a meal and going, oh, we had a laugh, guys, but we won't go there again. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, the restaurant analogy is a good one, because when you go to a fancy restaurant, you don't expect twice as much steak just because the steak cost more. If anything, you expect slightly less steak.
That's true.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but when you go fly fishing, you're paying for a wonderful day, aren't you, on a beat in a beautiful spot, and it's not about how many fish. It's about, did you have a great day? And is it a fabulous part of the world? And are you lucky to be there? And are you there with your friends? And I think shooting for me is exactly about that. You're surrounded by your friends. You're on a day off where you're going to have a terrific day. And it's as much about the camaraderie as it's not about the size of bag to me at all. Never has been, never will be. It's about, did you have an absolute mint of a day? Was there lots of laughing, joking, and amusement? And was the shoot that you were on it? And they looked after you properly, and they gave you a fair day. And
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your fishing analogy has just thrown up another thought in my mind, though, because in stalking, you go out and you may pay for an experience, but then you can shoot something and suddenly they get the scales of the tape measure out and you don't know how much you're in for. and that actually is almost the other extreme, isn't it? Which is, you've just been put in front of, like, let's say you've gone on a stalk, you've been out for hours and hours up and down the hills, and suddenly you're put in front of something which, whatever. And you may end up going out for something which is like, when you're properly culling, but they go, well, they haven't found anything, and they actually show you quite a large stag or something, and that ends up costing you more, even though you might not wanted to have shot that. So I don't know. It's complicated.
No one's making you pull the trigger, though, are they?
No, but there's another debate.
A tactical miss, Chris. Dare I say it?
Yeah, a lovely stalk.
That's what I do when I'm pheasant shooting, is tactical missing.
Yes.
A tactical miss. We need to know if anyone's ever had a tactical miss.
So on my local shoot, we put down a number of white birds, and so the thing is, if you see a white bird and you make no effort to shoot it, it's a £20 fine. If you were spotted by one of the other guns, if you shoot at the bird and you miss, it's £10 a shot. If you happen to shoot the white bird, all the other guns have to put £20 in behind the bar to keep the bar afloat. And the same chap shot 2 white pheasants last Saturday, looking very smug. The good news is we tapped him up for a tenner because he missed one of them with one barrel.
Yes, well, hold that thought, because we might come on to something vaguely related to that in a minute. But first, we need to decide if that unpopular opinion was indeed unpopular. So to conclude, we think that he's on the right lines, but the method that he suggests isn't quite right. Does that sound fair?
Absolutely.
I think you were right, George. Where you said
so
we've got to go further than that, and it's got to be about the experience, not the number of shots. The number of shots shouldn't be the barometer for how much enjoyment you're having on a day.
Yeah,
I think it's really important that we challenge how it's currently done. Yeah. That's what I'd like to see more of happening. So
Agreed.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I agree too.
I think we're calling it a popular opinion then, are we?
Yeah, it's first in a while.
Yes. Right. So, Chris, we don't have a shooting hero this time round.
No, we've got a twist. We've chosen something different. And Corey's almost... I actually wonder whether he was part of this story. So we have a story that Joe has shared with us that demonstrates the importance of avoiding hubris and pride on the shooting field. It goes like this. I've listened to the pod for a good while and very much enjoying it. I don't have a whose bird is it anyway or a shooting hero, but I do have a story which you may think is worthy of the pod. On a late December shoot day last season at Cricket St Thomas in Somerset, we were told at the start of the day that some white pheasants had been released. Here we go. Some of which were tagged, some were not. So far in the season, they had shot one tagged bird. The fines were simple. If an untagged bird was shot, £20 from each of the guns. But if it was tagged, that was £100 from the offending gun and a bottle of port for Beaters Day. We had shot 2 drives and 0 white pheasants had been seen. On the third drive, one unnamed gun, who he is then immediately, by the way, named as Mr. J. Wheatland, farmer extraordinaire from just outside Cricket St Thomas in Somerset, was... So Mr. J. Wheatland was pegged on peg 9 at the back of a wood, which looked to be out of the shooting. After the drive, a very cocksure Mr. Wheatland returned to the gun bus, grinning like a Cheshire cat. He had shot not 1, not 2, but 3 white pheasants. Mr. W thinks that he's stitched his fellow team up for 60 quid each. The picking up team came back with 3 white pheasants, as we'd all been quite confidently told. The birds were then checked for tags, not 1, not 2, but 3 tagged white pheasants.
Oh dear.
Costing the humble farmer 300 quid and 3 bottles of port for Beaters Day. Hopefully this tale is worthy of at least a mention on the pod and hopefully some garters for Mr. Wheatland.
Oh, that is a great story.
I love the fact that he was so cocky about the fact he'd shot them. That is exactly what he deserved, isn't it?
Great twist.
Brilliant.
A great twist.
Totally.
Yeah, it's funny how often, obviously, Corey, as you were just sharing, it's funny how often these sorts of things happen, and it's all part of the joys of it, isn't it?
It is. Great fun. Lots of banter on the white pheasant as well. Always.
Yeah. And a lot raised for charity, no doubt, in between.
Yeah, I'm sure the GWCT love white pheasants.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. They could be doing more there, actually. They could almost sort of offer free white pheasants for your shoot, couldn't they?
Yeah.
On the basis that...
Yeah, I mean, they have the sweepstake thing in Hampshire where they ask shoots to collect sweepstakes on the total bag and collect that money. And I think you then get a bottle of slow gin per however many quid it is that you raise through your sweepstake over the course of the season. And I think there's some of the bigger shoots, basically supply the next season's slow gin requirements off the back of that. So I think it works for everybody.
Yeah, I was actually, George, the day that we had, do you remember with Ben Hughes at Hitchen's Farm?
Yes, you were itching to shoot one.
Well, indeed. So he collects money for Oddballs, the cancer charity, and because he'd had a scare himself. And so he'd put down some white pheasants. And because of the whole sort of story, because of his situation, I was just longing for these white pheasants to come over. I was like, I'll definitely make a donation. Come and send them my way. Yeah. And it completely changed the way of looking at it, actually. Rather than it being a fine, I was sort of like, But anyway, none came my way. And I would have missed anyway, so it would have been fine. And
actually, on the Ben Hughes front, former podcast guest, of course, he put a post up just the other day detailing the amount that he'd sent to Oddballs most recently, and it was several £1,000s. Wow. So, awesome. It's a very effective fundraising technique.
Yeah. Great. Mm. We do it on our Rockingham Castle shoot. we have a sweepstake at lunchtime. And the winner takes half, and the other half is donated to that particular person's charity of the day.
And how often do you push the winner into giving the whole lot?
It normally happens invariably without asking. It's very nice.
It's one of those things, isn't it? On a shoot day, everyone just stares at you for a prolonged period of silence until you give the whole lot.
But sometimes there's shoot days that have got some arcane numbering system, up 4, down 2, multiply by 3 to find your peg number. I've heard of a shoot, and I don't know if this is apocryphal, where the sweepstake was you take the number of birds that you think will be shot, multiplied by the number of shots that you think will be fired, divided by how old you think the keeper's wife is, and the person who comes closest to the number at the end of the day wins the pot. I have no idea if this is true, but can you imagine that?
You need a calculator, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So, do we think Mr. Wheatland deserves some garters there?
For sure.
Oh,
just sort of like a consolation prize.
Yeah.
Especially as he's been named and shamed.
Yeah, exactly. It's the least we could do for exactly.
Right, good. So Joe and Mr. Wheatland and Sean and Donald, and now of course Corry and you, Marcus, are all members of the Most Noble Order of the Garters and will shortly be in receipt of your very own sets of the highly exclusive, highly desirable Guns on Pegs podcast shooting sock garters. That's getting harder to say every time. If you too have got a shooting confession, a quandary, or a query that you'd like us and our guests to help you with, or if you've got an unpopular opinion that you'd like to share, or if you've got an equally funny story or a shooting hero who you would like to nominate, drop us an email to pod@gunsonpegs.com, and if we use it in any future episodes, you will qualify for a set of garters. On that note, I just wanted to take the chance to shout out a couple of existing members of the Order of the Garter who've sent in photos of theirs in some slightly unusual situations. Some listeners may recall that we had a Teutonic correspondent who we rather wittily, I thought, named Herman. He's sent in a picture of him wearing his garters paired with some traditional lederhosen, which is a particularly strong look, I think. And then I also need to mention Ken Orra, who emailed way back in the mist of time from Queensland, Australia. And he sent a photo of his garters, but he's come at it from almost the opposite direction to Herman, in that he's teamed his garters with a pair of traditional Aussie stubbies and some work boots.
Nice.
It's a really strong look.
You can always rely on an Australian to come through for you.
Exactly. So if you want to see those photos, they're both on the Guns on Pegs Instagram account. So do go and have a look and leave a comment to let them know how good they look. They're great photos.
Yeah, I must also thank Graham Fairbrother and his mates for inviting me to join them for a drink at the Bull in Three Leg Cross in East Sussex the other day. Graham lives in Texas, and he sent us a lovely message back in the summer saying how much he'd enjoyed listening to the pod on long drives. And we basically organised to meet up. And Graham and his mates meet every Tuesday and every Friday in their local, which I think is a seriously strong agenda of twice a week for a proper session. And they all have the Harvey's Sussex Best Bitter in jugs on the side of the bar, just enjoying themselves. And there's another guy there, Tim Nolan, who runs the local syndicate. It's a hell of an atmosphere, and it was an absolute pleasure to join them. So
awesome.
I'm
That's quite a commitment.
Yeah, I'm just very jealous, really. I think every Tuesday and every Friday sort of should be made standard, really.
I'm gonna.
These gentlemen of leisure.
Can one of you guys send the link to this podcast to my wife and let her hear that bit?
It's a good idea.
This will be played in a lot of kitchens around the land in coming days, hopefully.
Yeah. So, just before we round off all the correspondence, our 50th episode is coming up. So when this pod goes out, it will be the Friday after. So it's Friday the 4th of November. We're having a live 50th episode at Clay's Bar, which is at Moorgate near Liverpool Street in the City of London. And basically, we need loads of you there, loads of listener correspondence, get it sent in. Come along anytime from sort of 5 p.m. We're going to do the pod and sort of maybe about 7. No need to RSVP. Everyone is welcome. Clay's Bar is a bar where they've got these shooting simulators. And we've got loads of them going on all evening, and we can have some sort of prizes for the best shots. So that should make it enjoyable after a load of drinks at sort of 11 p.m. And yeah, it's a hell of a setup if you haven't been, and this is your chance to come along and enjoy it full hog. So awesome. Friday the 4th of November, if anyone is in town or can get there, do come along.
Yeah, and actually Chris and I went and did a little recce the other day, and it is an amazing place. And I'm really looking forward to it. It's very exciting. So yeah, looking forward to seeing lots of you there. Now then, Corry, you sort of alluded to this story right at the beginning, but this first coat, the ptarmigan, it kind of changed shooting, I think. So can you give us the full origin story of the ptarmigan, and then obviously Schöffel Country coming out of that?
Schöffel Country, George.
Schöffel Country. I knew I'd get it wrong the first time I said it.
I'd argue that even Marcus's execution of that wasn't quite spot on.
No, it's not perfect. It's Schöffel Country.
Yeah. Exactly. Schöffel. It's the umlaut. Don't forget the umlaut.
Exactly. That's the one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll take you back to 1992, December, skiing in Austria. I'd just become the ski distributor in the UK for Schöffel, and it was minus 31 degrees, and we were having the time of our life. Powder snow over knees, up to hips, and we did a full day. And although it was extremely cold, minus 31 C is not to be messed with. I was wearing my Schöffel GORE-TEX ski gear, cozy as cozy. And then wind forward 2 weeks, I'm at Rockingham Castle on James Saunders Watson's shoot, one of my oldest and best friends. And at 2:30, we stopped the shoot because there was a north wind blowing, and we were all in our barber wax jackets, and we were absolutely frozen to the core. It was completely miserable. And so we went in for lunch in the Great Hall, big roaring fire. And while I was drinking my horse's neck, I was contemplating why I was at minus 31 degrees C 2 weeks before in a Schöffel GORE-TEX ski suit. And while at minus 7 degrees with a northerly wind in England, it was too cold to enjoy what was an absolute banging day, because it was blue skies, but very, very windy and very, very frosty. And so that's where it happened. So
makes perfect sense, doesn't it? You're about to solve a big problem.
A big problem from having what should have been an amazing day, which was a terrible day, and then having an amazing week skiing in Austria, where it was ridiculously cold, but amazing conditions where we just had the time of our life. And it was just one of those moments when you go, well, what if we took the GORE-TEX out of a ski product and made it into a country wear product? And then I went off to see if that was a good idea. So I went to Purdy's and persuaded the Honourable Mrs. Beaumont to give me an audience, which in itself was quite a feat. It was quite fun. I rang up her PA and she went, "Do you have an introduction?" And I went, "Well, I've got a great introduction. I want to make the best shooting coat in the world, and I want her to help me." And the lady went, No, you need a formal introduction from someone that the Honourable Mrs. B would know. I'm going, well, I don't know who she knows. And so she said, well, the answer will be no. So anyway, not to be outdone, I rang up the PA the next day and said, look, I really do need to see the Honourable Mrs. B. So what's her favourite flower? And she went, well, that's slightly unusual, but it's roses. So I sent her 48 red roses and waited a couple of days and then rang up on the Friday, rang the PA and said, have they arrived? And she went, all 48 of them, Corry. So I said, and what's been the effect? And she said, on this occasion, she doesn't require an introduction.
Smooth.
So I got to see the Honourable Mrs. B, who instantly got very excited about the whole concept of this and introduced me to the long room and to Richard, her husband, and to their master gunfitters. And that's how it all started, actually. And then she said, but you don't want to just listen to us. We've got a very nice fellow called Edward Asprey, who's in the Asprey gun room around the corner. And I said, well, I've already tried him, but he requires an introduction. And she said, well, your luck's in. and she gets Edward on the buzzer and goes, Edward, I'm sending this very nice man round, and you're to see him immediately. So half an hour later, I'm in with Edward, and he's going, excellent idea. We've been needing something like this. I freeze in my Yorkshire estate every January for exactly this reason. North wind, it's terrible. So you think you can solve my problem? And I went, I can guarantee I can solve your problem if you'll help me. And he went, well, I'd be delighted to. Oh, and by the way, we need someone to market this. So there's a nice lady at the Telegraph called Hilary Alexander, who's the head of the fashion desk. So she can come along, do the shoot, and why don't we launch it next August, on the 12th of August? So Edward lent us his grouse moor up in North Yorkshire, and he said there's another chap called Phil Burt who's quite a useful shot. You should go and have a chat with Phil, and another gentleman down at Roxton's in Hungerford. So I used those four companies and all of their expertise to create the first ptarmigan, and that's how it all started. We made 300 and shipped them in, and the Honourable Mrs. B rang me back the day after we'd shipped them into Purdy's and I'd done the training, and she went, I think we're on to a good thing, Corry. One of our good customers has just bought one for each of his 4 estates.
Good. And
we'd sold out. We'd sold out in a month.
Really?
So that's how it started.
Goodness.
Yeah, we only made 300 our first season because that was a production minimum, and the rest is history, really. So
that's so cool, isn't it?
But we agreed, Chris, that we would only supply those 4 retailers for the first 2 years as a thank you for them taking their time and their expertise and using their contacts to start it off.
But that in itself is a very clever move because it creates this air of exclusivity as well. I feel like you might have been thinking in a double way about that, but that's awesome. And so what is it that then takes? What does it take then? Do you think for a brand like Schöffel? I give up. To go from sort of being popular to then iconic.
I think the level of expertise at Purdy's and Asprey's and Roxton's, and we also use Farlow's. They were our 4th partner. I think we absolutely got the product perfectly right for what the British sporting shop was looking for, and it was a paradigm shift product. No one had ever used GORE-TEX in the country market before. It's now a household name, and it just changed the way people could dress. So you could wear light things that kept you super warm, super dry, and just extended everyone's level of comfort. We opened 4 customers a year for the first 15 years. So, and I'd agreed that with the gang of 4 at the beginning, and we kept to our side of the bargain. We now only have 100 retailers in the UK that sell our product, who we think are the right 100. And we've tried to look after them extremely well, but at the same time, we've looked after our brand, I think, appropriately, and just allowed it to gently grow. And it, through no fault of its own, became very popular very quickly, and has, I think, I wouldn't know if you would agree, Marcus, it's maintained that look and feel of a product that we don't overmake the number of products. So there's always, I think we've tried to be respectful to the market and respectful to the retailers who helped us on the journey, who've all been fabulous. And the ones that we do business with are great people. They take it very seriously. They service their customers, our customers, very well. And I think it's been a symbiotic relationship between our retailers and ourselves and our end consumers who, give us lots of good feedback. The brand is still growing. We've also had a bit of fun by calling each of these pieces from. So we're based in Oakham in Rutland. So that's where the Oakham came from. The naming's been quite simple. Yeah. Every village in Rutland's been peppered with all of our names, Lindens. And all my friends are going, we should be charging you rent for borrowing our village for one of these things. So we've had a bit of fun with it too. We've had a lot of fun, actually. It's been a great.
But, I guess for anybody who wasn't involved in shooting 20 years ago, they probably don't realise quite what an impact having these technical fabrics involved has made. Because I remember, what would I have been in 1993? I'd have been 9. But I remember standing on the peg with my dad, aged 11 or 12, and just being achingly cold, like bone-chillingly cold. And that's in Hampshire in November, so not actually that cold, but it just makes an enormous difference. And if you haven't experienced that, then you can't fully appreciate what a difference that's made. And now, of course, GORE-TEX is everywhere.
Well, I think, for me, the thing that makes Schöffel unique is their expertise. They're the oldest outdoor clothing company in the world. And we're in a genuinely unique position in that we can take that incredible experience, and access to latest technology is obviously a key part of that. But the expertise that they have in that company are just phenomenal. They make BMW's motorcycle wear. They make arguably the best ski gear in the world. They have an incredible range of outdoor clothing, and so these fabrics and the technology and the articulation and the functionality of this, these products is well and truly tested outside of shooting. And we are very lucky we get to bring it into shooting and now fly fishing. And for me, that's really what makes Schöffel unique. And Corry obviously spotted that opportunity very early on. He saw, the opportunity to bring that expertise, the technology, the fabrics, into British country sports. And continue to do that.
The thing I really enjoy about this is making a significant change in a world that's sort of conservative with a small c. Obviously, Guns on Pegs has been up against it when we were sort of embracing the internet in the early days, and in a small way, there's some similarities. Because I remember when I was late 90s, let's say, I remember being out and people were still in the old school coats and the hunter wellies, which I always refer to as fridges, because I don't know how they made your foot colder than it was before you put it in. But the hunter wellies and the barber wax jacket was the staple item. And I remember people turning up in like the early ptarmigans, and it was like, oh wow, you've embraced the change, and it was a big deal. And I think any brand that can push those boundaries and be the first mover, I love seeing it. So yeah, it's been really interesting to see the shooting world embrace that change
slowly.
God, yeah. I mean, yeah, we could talk all day about slow adoption in the shooting world.
So there's another product that we obviously have to talk about, and you've mentioned it already, which is the Oakham gilet. Now, it's also known as the Fulham Life Jacket, the Chelsea Flak Jacket. I mean, there's so many different variants on it. Obviously, it is an incredibly popular product, but how do you feel about those sort of pet names for it? Do you see them as signs of affection, or like how do you feel about that?
Well, I suppose, George, I used to live in Fulham, so I can't complain too much.
I see it as a badge of honor, personally. It's any product that has a nickname and people know what you're referring to. I think that's a pretty unique and cool position to be in.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. It's people embracing it, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think it's a lot of fun.
Exactly, and Corry's always been. Yeah. He's always said you've got to have fun. And there has always been an element of fun in everything that Corry does business-wise. Schöffel has been no different. Yeah, we're a very serious company in with regards to product development and adoption of technology and what the Schöffel kind of company stands for. But, at the end of the day, it's a product that is designed to enhance your experience in the field. And that's just about enjoying yourself, right? So, it's fun.
And so, I did wonder this, because you've mentioned fly fishing, and I do want to ask about this, but talking about fun then, so you must need 30 days a season put through the books just to product test.
God, I wish that was true. I wish that was true, Chris. That was the idea when I first sat down with Peter Schöffel and said, I think we need a fly fishing range. I mean, that's exactly the angle that I was going at it from. But I've got to be honest with you, I've never fished less than I have over the last couple of years.
Oh, really?
Been quite busy, yeah.
Corry wasn't laughing though, so
is your other job title Chief Product Tester?
I wish it was. No, I'm very lucky in that we've got lots of great contacts who have been doing serious product testing for us. We do take the product testing seriously, and of course, it's when I do fish and shoot, I don't wear anything but Schöffel and the Chameau, of course. But no, it's been busy. There's been a lot going on, and I don't begrudge that, but that's definitely not part of my remit, product testing anymore. That is passed on to people who do have the good fortune of either doing it professionally or doing it recreationally a lot more than I do.
Yeah, but even though obviously you would always lean on the professionals and the people that are doing it all the time, I'll bet when you're both out in your own kit, you sort of come back and you think, do you know what, if we just did this or did a bit of that.
Surely, absolutely. We're constantly scrutinizing every element of everything and having endless discussions. Almost on a weekly basis. We get feedback either internally from members of the team. We talk about how we can make things better, just little tweaks.
But also, Chris, externally, every time we're out shooting and people, I don't know how it gets around, but it does. Someone will go, "Oh, so you had something to do with the Schöffel shooting cat?" And go, "Well, yeah, I did actually." And they go, "Great, I've got this wonderful idea. Let me tell you about it." So,
how often is it a wonderful idea?
Well, you've got to be slightly careful. If you're overly enthusiastic, you get a bill.
So true.
But it's lots of great ideas. Great ideas come, and actually feedback on how you can improve something as well, where they go, if you only did this, or could it do that, or when you make another one, could you do the other? And it's really inspiring, actually. And these are real users, and a real user loves their gear, and this brand is all about fabulous gear, reinventing what we've already invented and making it better, and that's exactly what the Schöffel pledge is, and that's why we've got a wonderful relationship with our tech team in Germany, because they're finding new fabrics all the time, new materials all the time, and they just go, "Guys, we've just seen this. Do you think you could use it, Marcus, Corry?" And it's so we're very lucky. So we've got a big R&D team in Germany who've got their eye on the future, and so it's very dynamic. Sorry, Chris, you were about to say.
No, I was just going to say, you what you were just saying hit a point with me, because you think if you like normal shooting, normal coats in general, people don't really sort of care that much about them. A shooting coat, my God, they've got every opinion under the sun, don't they? And they become loyal to this is the coat I wear, and I have to have this one because I can load from this pocket and I can put my hands here and do this and do that. And God, it just almost gets too much in a way.
But I mean, at the end of the day, the product is designed for practical use. So actually, the direct feedback from end consumers is directly relevant to us. Some of the ideas are not brilliant, but some ideas you think, well, actually, that's a great idea. Let's look at developing that.
Yeah.
Now then, I want to ask you. You've mentioned it already a little bit, but I want more information. You guys have just come back from a fishing trip, going after a species that is right at the top of my list. Tell me a bit more about your trip to the Bavarian Alps, I think it is, and what you were targeting there.
So we're very, very lucky. The Schöffel fly fishing range came about from a conversation that I had with Peter Schöffel 5 years ago. our mutual passions in life is fly fishing, like you, George, and it became very clear very early on that our big love was fly fishing, and Peter owns his own little stretch of a river in the Bavarian Alps, which he is very proud of, but he's very protective over it. It's reserved for him and his friends. To get an invite to go and fish on his river is quite a big honour. And Corry and I finally cracked the nod this year. And it's spectacular. It's a beautiful river in the Bavarian Alps. It has wild rainbow trout, some browns, a lot of grayling. And it is home to a species of salmonid called Huchen, Huchen. Some people haven't heard of them. They are endemic to the Danube basin. And they grow to enormous sizes. They're a cannibalistic species. They feed on, trout, other salmonids, grayling, and they grow up to sort of 50 pounds plus. If anyone knows what a Mongolian taimen or taimen looks like, they're apparently a close relative of the taimen. They're incredible fish, stunning. That was our primary quarry. And on the afternoon of our first day, we spotted a fish. We were stood on a bridge looking at a large rainbow trout, and then it was suddenly absolutely dwarfed by a 1 meter plus Huchen, estimated at 25, 30 pounds, which we fished for, we covered. To no avail. The problem with Huchen is that they when they feed, they'll eat a 1.5 to 2 pound trout, and then they don't need to feed for several days. So you've got to wait until you've got to be quite lucky. They're not particularly numerous. You've got to find a fish, and then your timing's got to be perfect. They've got to come onto the feed. They're quite a shy fish, so they tend to feed in the evenings and even into the night. So a lot's got to come together for it to happen, and we were kind of lucky that on the last afternoon, the second afternoon, it kind of did come together, and the weather changed. It started raining. It was windy, and they kind of like changeable conditions apparently. And Peter and a friend of his were fishing in a big pool on the river, and the Huchen came on to feed, and both of them hooked and lost fish of over 1 meter.
Heartbreak.
Yeah, really heartbreaking. Well, I got a frantic phone call from Peter and said, come downstream, as soon as possible. And he very graciously put me onto this pool, and I fished it, covered it, but the fish didn't come back up again. But less than 24 hours after we left, I got a text message from Peter's friend, and it was a photograph of a 125 centimeter Huchen, estimated at between 40 and 50 pounds.
Oh my God.
A huge fish. So long and the short was we were ultimately unsuccessful in catching a Huchen, but to be fair, it would be kind of wrong to succeed on your first attempt. They're known as the fish of 1,000 casts in Germany, and honestly, I didn't begrudge coming away having not landed one our first time. We had an amazing time. We caught lots of beautiful rainbow trout, some really lovely grayling in spectacular scenery, and it's a stunning river.
And we tried some good new product too.
Oh, well, now, I was about to ask you about the flies, but I'm actually now going to follow that up. So are there plans to expand that fishing range then?
Yeah, absolutely, George. That's we have a number of new product coming into the range, actually spring summer 23. So, which we're very excited. We can't talk about just yet. Obviously, our retailers know what's coming. So that new product will be in store from February, March next year, 2023. We're very excited to get it out there, but it's a constantly evolving process. So we work pretty much 2 to 2.5 years in advance. So we're already working on spring summer 24 product, which we're equally excited about. So constantly looking for new fabrics, new technology, new things that we can adopt and add to the range, and ways that we can tweak and improve product. So that product testing is an ongoing, it's a constant thing.
A hell of a business. So you've got skiing, shooting, fishing. What other passions have you got companies for or not got companies for yet?
Cycling, Sigma Sports in London is one of ours. So basically, anything we love to do, we do it.
Yeah, create a company for it. Yeah.
Pretty much. That's what Corry does.
Great scheme.
It's kind of nice, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're on the same side of the fence here. That's why I'm doing this.
And I've convinced Corry to go into stalking as well. So we've introduced stalking into the Schöffel Country range. So we have our stalking smock, which has come into the range.
Oh, really?
So cool. Another example of us finding something that we enjoy doing and turning it into, a hobby, into a profession.
Well, Chris, you'll know. I mean, and I would think all of your listeners probably spend a lot of time at work, so you may as well enjoy it and go and do something that you love. And I've been lucky enough to find a wonderful company in the Schöffel Country, very old school, 200-plus-year-old family business, just interested in steadily growing their business. And fantastic. So same for us. Bradshaw Taylor's 127 years old this year. We were started in 1895. So we're having time of our life, actually. It's brilliant. And we've got lots to go at. Marcus is persuading me that there are lots of fly fishermen in North America, George. So apparently it's quite important to go and check that out, right? Yeah. So God loves a trier, and he is.
What you need is a product specifically designed for steel headers.
George, we're on to something here.
Yeah. But you also just need like a pair of flip-flops so you can just expense the summer holiday as well, and then you're sorted.
Product testing in the Seychelles.
The solution there is saltwater tropical fly fishing products.
Of course, that's on the way, George.
Schöffel swimming trunks.
But as we know in our office, you've got to be a seriously good negotiator to make your summer holiday a fly fishing holiday.
Yeah.
Digby in our office gets away with it every year, and I do not know how.
No, I haven't quite nailed that
because
yet.
He's going to the Maldives.
Well, on his own for 2 weeks.
Very good. Well, look, guys, the way that talking about loves, the way that we like to end these podcasts is with our section that we call Desert Island Shooting. So, Desert Island Shooting is one last day. Let's say that shooting's going to end. Where is it going to be? Money's no object. Who would you have with you? What are you doing? Go for it. Who wants to go first?
Corry looks like he's still cogitating, so I'll kick off. Do you know what? And this is probably really cliched, but actually the place doesn't massively matter to me. It's the people. And, I think I've actually had this conversation directly with you in the past, Chris. My favorite day shooting every year are the ones with my closest mates.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter where you go. Yeah. And there was, I've got my best mate, Jim Hart, who lives in Somerset. He was until recently a member of a little syndicate. He and his brother Simon, member of a little DIY syndicate. The quality of shooting, yes, they present the odd good bird, but it really wasn't about the shooting as such. But I'd always come away from a day with that team just so happy, having had just the most, and laughed so much.
Yeah.
And just a great team of guns who do it all for the right reasons. There was always a scramble at the end of the day about who could have the most pheasants, almost a bun fight over the bag because everybody wanted to take more game home. And you drove home just feeling really good about yourself at the end of the day. And it felt wholesome. And that's really what shooting should be, and what it always was when I shot as a child with my grandfather. It just felt, you just had a lot of fun, a great day with great people, and you've made great memories. And actually, so rarely are those memories about, the actual shooting. They're about the conversations and about the people.
It's so lovely. And the problem with those days is you never want them to end. So you end up sort of sitting in the armchair by the fire, drinking into the evening.
Always. Yeah.
And best memories ever, they are, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if I was to tell stories about my days with Jim and Simon Hart, most of the stories would probably have occurred actually after the shoot had finished. It's the fun and games and the conversation and the camaraderie and the laughter. And that could be said of of any number of days shooting that I've had with really good mates. Our day, Chris, that we had together last year was a perfect example of that. Yes, there was some great birds, but it wasn't about that. It was about the company, and we just had an awesome, wholesome day shooting. It was Chris, myself, Patrick Galbraith, Tom Payne, Will Pocklington, and Will Morton, and we just had an awesome day.
It's also, I must remember to drink less the night before this time, because it was good fun. Looking forward to it. Corry, what are you doing for your desert island shooting?
Well, I would go back to the original place where I had the idea, which is Rockingham Castle, with James Saunders Watson, one of my very best old mates, and all of his family actually. And same thing. It's all about the experience. It's not about how many birds we shoot. It's about the way we shoot, and the way we interact with each other, and have a lot of fun. And so that would be it for me. It's a grand setting, but it's not about the setting. It's about the people. And as with all shooting, right, which we all have enjoyed over the years. And for me, my desert island would be that one, because that's where the original idea came from. And so it would be fitting for me to be there.
This time in a ptarmigan, not in a barber.
Yeah.
Oh yes, George. Every time. Yeah. We're talking 1994, mate.
I couldn't tempt you with a private jet to the Bavarian Alps to round off catching a 1.2 meter Huchen, could I?
Oh yes,
Marcus.
Now we're talking. Yeah. If we're allowed to include fishing, that changes everything.
Now you're talking porn.
Suddenly, Marcus is perked up.
You got to get creative on desert island shooting.
Well, if you could choose fishing over shooting, I'm afraid to say it would be. And I know, George, you'd be nodding and concurring here, but it would be. I'm afraid to say it would be a day's fishing, probably for Atlantic salmon, but with the same people, with Jim and Simon Hart, two best mates. It's about who you fish with as much as it is about who you shoot with.
Yeah. Very good point to end it on.
Indeed. Guys, thanks ever so much for joining us. It's been a lot of fun. Really nice to have you on.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks very much, George. Thanks, Chris.
Cool. Cheers, guys.
Right, so before we go, as per usual, there is one final reminder that you can get your hands on a pair of the very exclusive Guns on Pegs podcast shooting sock garters by sending us your shooting dilemmas for us to resolve, or by sending us your unpopular opinions, or your shooting heroes, or by getting in touch to let us know where you've been listening, or just send us a story that you think we'll find amusing. Send your submissions to pod@gunsonpegs.com, and if we use it in any future episode, we will send you some garters. Don't forget that we are recording our 50th episode live at Clay's Bar this Friday, if you're listening to it in the week that it comes out. Friday the 4th of November. Do come along. It'd be great to see you. We will be back in a couple of weeks' time with our 49th episode. But until then, thanks very much for listening, and goodbye.
Wow.